The anime begins in a church-like setting where we see a statue of a demon. It tells us that if a human summons a demon, they will immediately become its master. Unless a human sacrifices themselves, the demon will remain bound to the world of humans. Out of nowhere, we see a girl with blonde hair, and she realizes that everything she saw was just a simple nightmare. We see a demon with breasts flying over the city of Tokyo. When it is spotted by a dog that starts crying, we see the blonde-haired girl gathering with other girls. They are cooking food. We see the girl with grayish hair apologizing to God for attending a witch's meeting. Even though she is an angel, the blonde girl pours a special sauce over the meat, causing everyone to be amazed by the smell of the meat. Jashin suggests that they should ask their families for meat for the next gathering, but Minos tells her that if she does that, it would be cannibalism. Pecola seems to really enjoy the food, but Medusa quickly gives her a bowl with an egg. At that moment, Jashin asks Pecola what on earth she was doing there, as that table was only for demons, and she was from heaven, so she shouldn't participate. Pecola tells her that she was the one who invited her, which makes Jashin furious. At that moment, Yuri looks at her angrily, telling her that they should get along during mealtime. Out of fear, Jashin hugs Pecola. She asks if she can eat meat, but Jashin tells her she should finish her plate before asking for seconds. She looks at the food and seems to desire it a lot. When she finally finishes her plate, she goes to try the meat, but Jashin pushes her away and refills her plate with the same food she had. Medusa asks why she's so mean and puts a piece of steak in Pecola's mouth, leaving her amazed by the taste. Then Yurine also shares some meat with her. At that moment, Jashin gets very angry, saying that she shouldn't eat since she's an angel. She jumps on the food, grabbing all the beef and laughing maliciously. After that, she eats all the meat, and all the girls get angry. Yurine says there was plenty of meat, and she ruined dinner. Apparently, everyone is afraid of Yurine. Yurine takes out a sword and threatens Jashin. This makes Jashin jump to attack with a flying kick, but Yurine grabs her and starts slicing her from the tail. We see Jashin no longer has a tail and writhes in pain. Yurine offers the girls Jashin's meat, but Medusa says it's better to buy more meat. Pecola tries the meat and says it's very good and easy to chew. Medusa goes shopping with a bag on her head when suddenly someone asks her what the password is, and she says cannibalism. Apparently, that was the password to enter Jashin's house. Back at the house, Medusa gives Jashin an object, and she gets excited, but she snatches it away immediately and asks Jashin if she's going to do something bad with it, to which she responds, yes. That object was a lever. Jashin says they talk a lot about levers in the news, so it's the perfect weapon to strike humans. She also thinks about hitting Yurine with it. Medusa tells Jashin to stop since she was acting like a demon, to which Jashin says that's what she is, a demon. Then, Yurine arrives at the house. Jashin tells her that Medusa bought the DVD they were looking for, so she should rest and watch it. Apparently, Jashin was planning something nefarious. Then, we see a small demon flying around Beth's house, Jashin's dog. Yurine is watching the bloody movie, and she seems to really like it. While she's watching, Jashin sneaks up behind her with the lever and decides to hit her, but Yurine easily manages to defend herself. Jashin tells her that Medusa forced her to do it and that she was entirely to blame. Yurine grabs the lever and fights with Jashin. She jumps and tries to deliver a flying kick to Yurine, but Yurine dodges it and hits Jashin in the back with the bar, leaving her on the ground. A chainsaw sound is heard, and Yurine apparently wants to finish Jashin off. After that, she cuts her in half. Medusa describes how the room turned red that afternoon. Yurine mocks Jashin because she was cut in half but still sensitive, but Jashin says it will disappear soon when she finishes regenerate. Yurine says goodbye as she leaves the house, and Jashin stops being sensitive. It's revealed that the censorship was fake, as it was Yurine's birthday that day. She says she didn't expect Jashin to regenerate so quickly, so she'll attack her there. Medusa brings another surprise to Jashin. She explains that her plan is for when Yurine arrives, everyone should act calm and celebrate her birthday. Then Jashin approaches Yurine and gives her the gift. When this happens, she will take out the taser and use it to stun Yurine so she can then cut her throat. When Jashin finishes explaining her plan, Yurine appears. Apparently, she had come home early, and Jashin once again blames Medusa. When she quickly takes out the taser and attacks Yurine, she realizes it was a hair clipper. Jashin gets angry and asks Medusa why she bought that. She responds that it was to avoid trouble. We see Yurine has a taser. The girls go to hang up decorations for the birthday, and then they are all eating. We see that Jashin is burned and missing part of her tail. Pecola is concerned and asks if Jashin will be okay, and the girls reassure her her that she can regenerate. Jashin asks Medusa to release her, then she asks Minos, but both of them refuse. Yurine forgives her and asks if she wants to eat with. Apparently, Yurine was going to feed Jashin. When she gives her the beef, it seems to burn Jashin's mouth. After that, they all take a photo to celebrate the birthday. The next day, with heat tormenting the city, Jashin seems to be suffering from the heat. She speaks into the fan to sound like a robot and then asks Yurine why there isn't an air conditioner. Yurine responds that those things are expensive, so Jashin tells her that Medusa should pay for it since she has money. Yurine says that if they weren't with Flex Comics, she could afford an air conditioner. Jashin gets angry and says she's going to a store to cool off, but when she goes outside, she realizes how strong the heat is, saying it's hell, and she faints. This causes her to start swearing, but Yurine tells her not to do it because they'll get in trouble. Jashin says she'll quit, so Yurine tells her it's okay and that she'll cool her down. She proceeds to cut her and make her bleed in a bathtub. This quickly lowers Jashin's temperature. Next, we see a young girl named Kori, who is an ice demon. With her mere presence, she can cool down the entire room. Suddenly, she blows into a glass, creating a slushie. Jashi says that Kori bleeds strawberry syrup. At that moment, Kori stabs herself, and strawberry-flavored sauce comes out of her body. Then, Jashin asks Kori to do what she knows how to do, but she refuses, which makes Jashin angry. So Kori quickly makes it snow in the room, and Jashin tells her she should be glad to follow the orders of a higher-ranking demon like herself. This angers Kori, who makes the snow worsen. Jashin pushes her, but Yurine defends her. Seeing this, Jashin attacks Kori, but Kori grabs her arm and freezes it. Then, with a simple sigh, she freezes Jashin completely, throwing her to the ground and shattering her into 1,000 pieces. We see that it's still very hot in the city. Pecola walks through the streets, and even though she says that angels don't die, she is very hungry and hot. She collapses to the ground, saying that humans may have no salvation because they are too corrupt. She suggests that Judgment Day may be very close. After that, she falls to the ground, but she is caught by a girl, Yurine, so she takes Pecola to eat something. When she sees the curry, Pecola's mouth waters, and she quickly finishes the plate. Pecola mentions that without her halo, she is as weak as a human. Then, we see a girl asking the police about Jashin. She says her mother sent her from hell to find her. Pecola thanks Yurine for the food but regrets it because an angel shouldn't thank a demon. In the end, she thanks her anyway, making it clear that her mission was still to eliminate the demons. She runs away confused, wondering if she should be kind to others even if they are demons. Medusa and Minos go to Jashin's house but apparently can't find her, when suddenly she emerges from under the ground. Minos asks her why she was hiding there, and it seems it was another attempt to eliminate Yurine. Medusa tells her she should stop trying to eliminate her, but she gets angry and continues with her plan. When Yurine arrives home, Jashin is hiding under the ground. Out of nowhere, a trident is thrust into the spot where Jashin is. Apparently, Yurine hadn't noticed that she was there, and it was all just coincidences. But Jashin says she knows Yurine well and that she might have found out. She throws an eraser and various objects at her to see if she really didn't know where she was. After laughing, Jashin thinks her plan will work this time. She grabs a mallet and decides to eliminate Yurine, but Yurine is cleverer and calls her on her phone, revealing where she was hiding. When she discovers her, she tells her she's happy to be able to use her trident so quickly and proceeds to impale Jashin. The next day, we see Jashin talking on the phone with Medusa, who is about to buy some things. A man hears Medusa's voice and finds it beautiful, causing him to jump on her, telling her she should uncover her face. When he finally manages to do it, he becomes petrified since that was Medusa's ability. Back at home, we see Yurine talking to Medusa. She asks why Jashin always blamed her, and Medusa says she's been doing it since high school, and nothing has changed. She also recounts how Jashin used to take advantage of the weak. Jashin was bullying a poor goblin when suddenly a giant elf with oddly familiar hair arrives, asking if her son had done something wrong. Jashin quickly blames Medusa. Medusa explains how she was always mistreated by Jashin. Upon hearing this, Yurine tells her to stop talking and asks why she keeps forgiving Jashin when she has betrayed her many times. Medusa says that whenever Jashin is feeling down or sad, she comes to her. We see Jashin crying and begging Medusa not to leave because she couldn't do anything without her. She says Jashin can't do anything without her. Yurine, confused, tells her to be careful since she's the kind of girl who attracts jerks. At that moment, Jashin arrives. Medusa gives her 10,000 yen, but she gets angry and tells her not to give it to her in front of Yurine. We see Jashin giving Medusa a plush toy she had won, and she becomes very happy. We see Pecola walking through the city when she sees a couple talking about the type of gifts. Apparently, it's because Christmas is coming. At that moment, Pecola's stomach starts growling, and everyone turns to look at her. She eats a very small piece of bread, as it's all she has. Still, she feels fortunate to have something to eat. While eating, she overhears children talking about what they want for the holidays. They say they want fame, prestige, or a lot of money. When they mention Santa, Pecola realizes they are talking about Santa Claus and thinks it would be impossible for him to fulfill these children's wishes. Out of nowhere, she chokes on the bread and has to drink a lot from her milk carton. After almost finishing it, she realizes she's about to run out, and it was supposed to last her all day since it's her only beverage. Pecola asks Santa to please give her something delicious to eat, even though she's an angel. At that moment, Jashin appears with a lot of delicious food. Apparently, she's going to eat it all herself, and Pecola can only watch and wish for the food. When Jashin finishes eating, she looks at the crumbs of Pecola's bread and pounces on her to eat her food. While they fight, Pecola spills the little milk she had left. Jashin takes advantage of this to jump from the sky and deliver a flying kick. Then, she steals the remaining bread from her. Yurine arrives and asks Jashin if she ate her food, to which she immediately blames Pecola. Yurine tells her not to lie and squeezes her cheek until she lets go, leaving Jashin in pain and injured. She apologizes to Pecola for the trouble Jashin caused and gives her Jashin's portion of chicken. Pecola says she can't accept mercy from witches or demons, but Yurine still leaves her the piece of chicken, and Pecola doesn't hesitate to eat it. Then we see Yurine feeding Beth with Jashin's meat. Changing scenes, we see a girl with blue hair lying in the snow, only saying Jashin chant. The next day, we see Jashin training her abs, saying that it would improve her flying kick. Jashin asks Yurine to punch her in the abdomen to test her newfound strength. When Yurine punches her, Jashin falls to the ground because the punch was too strong. At that moment, a girl named Yusa knocks on the door. Yurine invites her in and they offer her tea. Apparently, this girl was Corey's sister and was also the same type of demon as her, an ice demon. Yusa apologizes for arriving unannounced but had to come because she heard that Jashin had mistreated her sister, and she looks at her with a vengeful expression. Yurine asks Jashin if she had done something wrong, and then Corey tells her everything bad that Jashin did to her. Jashin gets angry and tells Corey it's her fault for being a low-class demon, which makes Corey burst into tears. Yusa says she should stop insulting her because if she hurts Corey, she's harming their entire species. Jashin doesn't listen and continues insulting her. This angers Yusa even more, but Jashin decides to attack with a flying kick, saying that she's now stronger because she's trained her abdomen. But Yusa easily freezes her and leaves her on the ground. We see Jashin and Medusa at the International Bank. Apparently, Medusa would lend money to Jashin again. Yurine tells her to stop extorting Medusa, but Jashin says she always pays back the money she borrows, admitting that she paid back the 40 yen that Medusa lent her a century ago. Yurine asks Medusa if she's not too kind to Jashin, considering she's scum. Medusa says it's not like that. Hearing this, Jashin asks Medusa if she's going to take Yurine's side, calling her a damn traitor and saying she always acts like a goody two-shoes. Hearing this, Medusa starts crying and tells Jashin she's a fool, and that she would never return to the human realm. Hearing this, Jashin becomes sad because Medusa was her dear friend, but she refers to her as her dear cashier. Then we see Jashin drinking a lot of beverages at a food place, and when she leaves, she has an extremely large belly. She falls to the ground and starts crying over everything she's done. When people see her, she throws herself on them, asking them to love her. Suddenly, she hears Medusa's voice telling her to come back home, and upon seeing her, Jashin throws herself at her, hugging her and crying, while everyone applauds. A demon tells the story of Akihabara and how it became the city with the most otakus in the world, the city where you can find more than 400 gachapon machines. Jashin is trying out these machines. She plays in the typical machines where you insert a coin and get a little surprise ball, but apparently she always gets the same surprise, and out of nowhere, a car almost runs her over. She insults the driver, saying they should have their license revoked, and the demon explains that lying down on the street is not a good idea because things like this can happen. Jashin wants to get the special figure from the vending machines, but she only has the food that was meant for dinner. But as we know Jashin, she wouldn't leave without her prize. But then she remembers how Yurine would feed the food into the shredder if she spent dinner money on nonsense. Upon recalling this, she decides not to insert the coin. Just then, a kid arrives and says he wants to play that machine, so Jashin lets him go ahead. In her mind, she thinks it's better not to play, but then she hears that the kid has gotten the figure she wanted. Realizing this, she contemplates eliminating the child to get the figure, but decides it's better to come up with a plan to steal it. So, she decides to persuade the child to lend it to her for a moment, and when he does, she puts it in her mouth and then spits it out. The child, upon seeing this, gets furious and punches her in the jaw. Then the child leaves, but Jashin managed to keep the toy. She goes shopping for food, but after seeing the toy, she becomes sad because she says she will always remember that the kid hit and insulted her for it. Out of nowhere, a girl who appears to be from the police approaches Jashin. Later at home, Yurine receives a call. It's It's the police telling her that Jashin has been arrested. Yurine goes to the police station, and when she meets Jashin, she laughs. This enrages Yurine, who punches her in the jaw. Suddenly, the female police officer arrives and introduces herself in a special way, mentioning her name is Mei Takabana. She tells Yurine that Jashin's crime was theft, and what she had stolen was her heart. She fell in love with Jashin at first sight, so she wanted to ask Yurine if Jashin could stay. Yurine agrees without a problem. Mei gets very excited because Jashin is her adorable Orochimaru. After some thought, Yurine says that if Jashin goes with Mei, she would have more to do around the house, so she prefers that Jashin doesn't go with her. Hearing this, Mei gets angry and throws a sword at Yurine, but it goes in the wrong direction and accidentally hurts Jashin's tail. But Mei falls in love with how cute Jashin looks while suffering, so she decides to take many photos of her. Fortunately, Mei's work shift ends, so she simply leaves. We then see Jashin walking down the street and accidentally entering a hentai store while looking at her phone. Beth is howling, and Minos arrives to congratulate him on his beautiful howling. Then she starts howling along with him. We see a girl with a mask on top of a building. She says her mother had told her that human air was impure, but she decides to take off the mask. But when she breathes the air, she starts coughing quickly. Jashin decides to beg Yurine to die, but Yurine refuses. Jashin is disappointed because she thought that was the only way she could have gotten Yurine to die. While watching a soap opera, she realizes the best way to end Yurine's life is to throw her off a cliff. She imagines how the best possible situation for murdering her would be. When Yurine comes out of the bathroom, Jashin invites her to go to the mountains, but Yurine declines, so all of Jashin's plans will be meaningless. Minos complains that all the anime takes place at Jashin's house and decides to invite them to her house for a change, but Jashin says they are too similar. Then Minos suggests going to a desert, but Jashin says it's too vast. We see Medusa doing the shopping, but when she arrives home, she finds Jashin lying stiff in her house. When she talks to her, Jashin's head detaches and falls to the ground. Medusa quickly thinks that Jashin is dead, so she starts crying loudly. Upon hearing this, Jashin emerges from the closet, mocking Medusa, and tells her that was just the skin she had just shed. Medusa, seeing how Jashin is making fun of her, gets angry and tells her that she doesn't realize how sad she would be if she died. Jashin gets worried because Medusa's serious mode happens once every millennium. Medusa leaves, saying she won't return to the human world for a while. Jashin, realizing she's serious, grabs her arm and pleads with her not to go. Then Medusa removes her arm from her hand. Jashin apologizes, saying she went too far with the prank. Medusa says she can't stay and runs off. When she goes out the door, Jashin collapses on the floor and starts crying. Medusa comes back in and laughs, saying she was just getting back at her for the prank she pulled on her. The next day, we see Jashin and Medusa happy together again. We see Yurine and Jashin leaving a manga store. Jashin complains that they don't have her favorite manga, but then she sees a picture of Yurine on the store's wall. Yurine seems to brush it off and says she's hungry and they should go eat, but Jashin gets excited because they are part of an anime adaptation. Then we see them in a restaurant eating delicious food. Jashin wants to try Yurine's food, but she doesn't allow it because she doesn't like sharing bites with other people. However, she shares a bit of rice anyway. Once they finish eating, Yurine orders a box of meat to go. Apparently, that food she was carrying was for Pecola. Jashin gets angry upon hearing this. Pecola says she can't accept food from witches, so Yurine tells her she's not a witch, leaves her the food, and leaves the place with Jashin. Then we see Pecola starving, but she doesn't want to eat the food given by the demons. When Pecola decides to eat the food, she goes outside her cardboard house and sees Jashin eating her food. After finishing, Jashin gives her the trash and leaves. Pecola decides to drink water and then go to sleep. Then at home, we see how Yurine realizes that Jashin ate Pecola's food. To make amends, she puts Jashin's hand in a blender and then feeds it to Pecola. Yurine leaves, and we see Pecola already has her food and cries with happiness. Later, we see Minos had brought them a mandrake from the underworld for the girls. Jashin seems to hate her, but Yurine loves her, believing she's a rocker. Minos asks Jashin why she's so mean and negative. She tells her that she doesn't trust her because when they were kids, Minos always hurt her while playing. They show us how Minos used to play roughly with Jashin. Minos tells her it's her fault for being so weak. Upon hearing this, Jashin attacks her with a flying kick, but Minos easily repels her with her breasts, causing Jashin to fall on the mandrake and leaving her breathless. Jashin was happy to have killed it, but when she turns around, she sees Yurine's face. Minos quickly leaves. Yurine takes the opportunity to torture Jashin for eliminating her toy mandrake. The next day, we see Mei getting out of bed and greeting all her dolls and crafts. But apparently, she still misses her Orochimaru. When she gets dressed and walks through the streets, she sees a little girl coughing up blood, but it seems she didn't pay much attention. Then Mei sees a girl who duped a boy into entering a suspicious place, but that doesn't seem to bother her either. When she suddenly sees a statue of an old man in a cloak, she immediately falls in love with that figure and doesn't want to leave it. Then we see Jashin appear and spot Mei. She wants to leave without being seen, but just then Medusa arrives and talks to Jashin. This makes Mei overhear them and start following them around the city until she gets tired and throws an anime figure at them to make Jashin stop. When she succeeds, she hugs her and tells her not to leave her. Then she starts taking many photos with her. We see Piccola dreaming that many angels are giving her various delicious foods. But her dream doesn't last long since her boss called her to go back to work. Piccola's job was quite tough since she had to carry heavy boxes up giant stairs many times. When she rides the elevator with her coworkers, she sees that they're all acting crazy, and she feels uncomfortable. Suddenly, a guy thinks she's a giant praying mantis. Then when the elevator doors open, we see Piccola with her pants down. It's nighttime, and we see Jashin drunk. Suddenly, she bumps into a food shelf and breaks it. She vomits and falls asleep on the spot. Piccola returns home tired from work. When she arrives at her house, she realizes that the store was her home, and Jashin had destroyed it. Upon seeing this, she starts laughing while looking at the sky. We see in Jashin's house how Yurine and she are filling their bellies with curry. Apparently, they are both happy together for the first time. Days pass, and for 3 consecutive days, they eat curry. Yurine starts to get annoyed by this, so they play rock, paper, scissors. Jashin wins, so Yurine says that since she won, she'll have the privilege of bringing the mayonnaise. Yurine puts mayonnaise on Jashin's curry, and she finds it utterly disgusting. When Yurine adds mayonnaise to Jashin's curry, she becomes desperate, but after tasting it, she is delighted by the flavor. Seeing how delicious it was, she decides to prepare curry again the next day. We see Jashin preparing the curry, and it looks quite delicious. Suddenly, Yurine calls her, but Jashin is not there. We see Jashin in the desert. A demon explains that this happened because Jashin was stirring the curry in a particular way, creating a portal that teleported her to another place. Jashin looks at a gravestone and realizes she is at the entrance to hell. She imagines all the possibilities that could have led her there. While she thinks and walks, she encounters Minos, Medusa, and her younger selves. It appears that Jashin has traveled back in time. Young Jashin asks her older self if she knows them. She explains that she was making curry in the human world when she suddenly ended up there. Young Jashin says it's impossible because there was a flood in the human world caused by Noah's time. Then, the little girls start asking them how they look in the future. Jashin tells Minos that she now has big breasts, which makes her happy. She then tells Medusa that she's a great ATM, just like a bank. When young Jashin asks what she looks like, Jashin tells her that she looks exactly like her. Young Jashin feels sad because she wanted to see herself stronger. Jashin wonders how she can return to the human world in her time. The little girls smile and start performing a ritual around her. Suddenly, Jashin disappears. Little Medusa asks if she arrived safely. Apparently, Jashin managed to return to the present, but when she comes back, Yurine gets angry with her because, on top of leaving without saying goodbye, she stained her shirt with curry. When Yurine is about to hurt her, an Amazon delivery person arrives. When Yurine checks, we see that the boxes contain different types of swords. Yurine is delighted with how good Amazon Prime is for delivering things. Then, she begins to hurt Jashin. The next day, in August, Jashin and Yurine are walking down the street, complaining that it's still hot. Out of nowhere, they see Yusa and Cory selling slushies. Seeing that they were doing well with their slushy business, Jashin decides to set up one herself, conveniently right next to them. However, she struggles with her machine compared to them, who are skilled at handling the ice. Then, a demon appears explaining that the headache caused by eating ice or slushies is called ice cream headache. It seems Jashin's business is not going well because she takes longer to make the slushies and sells them for 100 yen more. So, Jashin decides to climb a mountain to find ice. Just then, the girl who wants to find Jashin is there. She prays to find her. Suddenly, Jashin runs past and knocks her onto the mountain. Jashin now has a better ice cream machine and sells much better slushies than the sisters. 2 men in suits arrive and ask Jashin if she has a permit to sell ice cream. She says she doesn't, while it seems Yusa and Cory did have one. So, the men take Jashin away. We see Piccola refilling water bottles at a tap and then struggling to walk back home because she hasn't eaten and has no strength. But she manages to fill the water bottles and leave them at her house without any issues. Suddenly, angel trainee Paparon appears out of nowhere. She claims not to be an apprentice anymore but rather a full-fledged angel. Paparon tells Piccola that it was challenging to find her. Piccola explains she was waiting for someone to come and rescue her because she had lost her halo. Upon seeing Paparon, Pecola starts thinking about all the things she will do and enjoy when she returns to heaven. But Paparon seems not interested in rescuing her and fires a rocket at Pecola. Pecola dodges the missiles and wonders what's going on. Paparon says she's impersonating Pecola because she's not there, so she doesn't want to save her, she wants to eliminate her. Apparently, Paparon is evil. Pecola mentions that she always knew she would be evil. Suddenly, Jashin arrives with curry to give to Pecola, but Paparon says she should not interfere and throws her curry on the ground. This greatly angers Jashin, so she kicks Paparon in the air and then hits her in the head with a rock. She wraps her in tape and goes to throw her off a cliff. Later, Jashin returns to Pecola and tells her to go home since Yurine wouldn't believe that a stranger spilled the curry. The next day, Jashin is walking down the street when suddenly Paparon attacks her with a mallet to the stomach. Jashin asks, "Who are you?" She responds that she is the angel called Paparon, but it seems Jashin has forgotten who she is. But then she sees her almond jelly on the ground. She starts crying because Yurine will hurt her for not bringing the almond jelly. Seeing that Paparon attacks Jashin because she wasn't paying attention, Jashin easily stops her, saying she has been training a lot. Paparon tells her she had a thorn stuck in her hand. Jashin falls to the ground in pain and starts writhing. Paparon mocks her. Jashin gets furious and tells her to stop making fun of demons. So, she eats her own halo. Then, Jashin prepares to launch a Kamehameha at Paparon, but she says they should be friends because she doesn't want to hurt her, and then runs away. Jashin says that Paparon is pretty sneaky for an angel. Later, Minos, Yurine, and Jashin are at their home. Minos mentions that Medusa went out with a friend. Jashin gets jealous and angry because she can't believe that Medusa went out with someone else. After a while, Minos leaves for work, and Medusa arrives. Jashin reproaches her because she went out with another girl who wasn't her and demands to know who she went out with. Medusa struggles to say with whom she went out. Jashin calls her a traitor. Then, Medusa starts crying and tells Jashin that she asked her not to tell her. Then, she realizes that she spent 5,000 yen on figurine machines. Jashin asks Medusa if she loves her, and she answers yes. Then, Jashin starts crying because she's short on money, but Medusa tells her that everything will be fine, as she will work harder to give her more money. Apparently, Jashin was faking her tears to get money from Medusa. Yurine gets angry and calls Jashin scum. She tells Medusa to accompany her to the station. When Jashin is lying down, she remembers Yurine's look and realizes that it was a look of contempt, not hatred as usual. So, she starts crying. The next day, Minos and Medusa are eating at a restaurant. Minos gives Medusa a letter that Jashin wrote to her. The letter is an apology for her behavior the day before. Medusa cries with excitement upon reading it. Then, she goes to see Jashin. It's exactly 1 p.m., and Jashin hasn't left her house yet. A talking eye congratulates Jashin for leveling up. Yurine asks what happens when she levels up, and Jashin mentions many benefits like free train rides, etc. Then, the eye gives her a bottle sent by the Demon King. If she drinks it, she can become super strong. The eye explodes after fulfilling its purpose. Jashin mourns its death but says that if a demon dies that way, they reincarnate in hell as a higher-ranking demon. When Jashin opens the bottle given by the talking eye, she complains about its terrible smell. Nevertheless, she decides to drink it, but it apparently tastes as horrible as it smelled. Jashin decides to meet Medusa for a meal but trips. Finally, Jashin meets Medusa. She is dressed quite nicely, much better than usual. Even Medusa is impressed. However, she is left speechless because it seems Jashin's legs have grown. Medusa tells Jashin that it's incredible that Lord Satan gave her such a good gift. Afterward, they go shopping, trying on different types of dresses in the stores. Medusa asks Jashin if she's enjoying her legs, and she says no because it's very cold. Then, two guys approach them to talk, but Jashin scares them away. Then, we see how Jashin and Medusa spend a wonderful day together. Later, when they go to the beach, Medusa stumbles, and Jashin realizes that Medusa's legs are turning into stone. Apparently, this is happening because Medusa was using contact lenses to avoid petrifying anyone, but her own spell was backfiring on her. Medusa laments and cries for ruining Jashin's day. She tells her to be quiet since they weren't having a bad day, and she hadn't ruined anything. However, she was very angry with the person who had sold those contact lenses to Medusa. Suddenly, through a portal, the pigeon who had sold the contact lenses to Medusa appeared. Jashin takes advantage of this and delivers a flying kick, excited that she now seems to have more power than before. Jashin carries Medusa home since she couldn't walk due to her petrified legs. Suddenly, it starts snowing, and they start singing Christmas song. Upon arriving home, Yurine tells Jashin that she seems to have a good mood after all. Upon hearing this, Jashin takes advantage of her leg strength and attacks Yurine with a flying kick, but her tail suddenly grows back. The next day, Jashin is walking down the street and crying because she lost again at the casino slot machines. Suddenly, Medusa arrives and gives food to Jashin. The food is fresh moon, which means new moon in Japanese. Then, Jashin asks Medusa for 20,000 yen to gamble. When they get home, Yurine punches Jashin in the jaw because she had spent the money on food. Yurine says she will deduct the money from her allowance for all the expenses she incurred. Then, she gives Jashin more money to go grocery shopping this time. Jashin becomes happy and says she'll fulfill her mission. Medusa wants to go with her, but Jashin says no, as she should solve her problems on her own. However, we see Jashin once again spending the money on gambling. Later, she goes to Pecola and hits her in the back to steal her bread crusts. At that moment, Paporon arrives, calling her pathetic and asking how she could be friends with a demon. Hearing this, Pecola says they are not friends. Pecola notices that Paporon doesn't have her halo, so she also couldn't return to heaven, so now neither of them fights. They realize that if no one comes to rescue them, they will never return to heaven. Pecola proposes a truce to Paporon, but she says it wouldn't be possible as she goes at her own pace. After that, she leaves. Pecola walks down the street and finds a counterfeit coin. Suddenly, she overhears people talking about how to make easy money, scamming wealthy people. Hearing this, Pecola worries about Paporon and decides to run to find her because the human world was wicked and difficult. But as she runs, she sees that Paporon has already found a job. The next day, we see Jashin eating with Yurine and Minos. Suddenly, a little ogre appears, and Jashin throws peanuts at him for good luck in the casino game. Yurine tells her to stop, or else she'll slice her with the kebab knife. We see Jashin walking down the street, eating a giant piece of sushi, and complaining about Yurine and the ogre. Pecola can't take it anymore and complains that even though she works, her money isn't enough in that country. At that moment, Jashin arrives, throwing peanuts at Pecola. Then she realizes she can eat it. Jashin explains that she has to remove the shell to eat it. She hands Pecola the sushi piece, and Pecola says it's called a humaki, and if she eats it while facing a specific direction, it'll bring her luck. Jashin leaves, and Pecola says that now she might have some luck. But at that moment, her ahumaki breaks, and she has to eat it from the ground. Yurine tells Jashin that she spent 100,000 yen on games, and it wasn't just on pachinko. Yurine asks Medusa why she gave her card number, telling her not to do it again because Jashin would always take advantage of it. Yurine tells Jashin that she doesn't earn money and needs to find a way to do so. She tells her that she earns it when gambling or selling clothes in video games. Upon hearing this, Yurine cuts off Jashin's hand. Then we see Jashin in the same place as last time, before spending the 10,000 yen on bets. It seems she has gone back in time, so this time, she decides not to spend the money on gambling and instead goes grocery shopping. However, she ends up entering the casino anyway. It appears that Jashin has entered a time loop and has already lost 17,771 times at the casino. Next, we see Jashin and Medusa caught in a bank robbery. Medusa asks Jashin to attack the robbers to save the people there, but Jashin refuses because she doesn't want to die. When Medusa hears the fear in the people's voices, she removes her mask and asks the robbers to look into her eyes to turn them to stone. The people in the bank applaud them for their bravery. May arrives and congratulates Jashin on the good job she did, taking photos with her and the robbers. In the evening, the alarm sounds, and Minos gets up to exercise and then deliver milk, apparently her job. Minos goes to Jashin's house for a meal, and Jashin serves her a giant plate of rice. Jashin comments on Minos having a lot of energy, and Minos mentions that she hasn't been sick since she was a child. She thanks Jashin for the meal and heads to work at the construction site with Pecola. It seems Minos is very strong, and Pecola is amazed by her strength and energy. We see Minos running and accidentally colliding with the gray-haired girl who was looking for Jashin. She apologizes and continues running. While running, she encounters some children who ask her to play with them, but she apologizes and declines for the moment. Jashin arrives to play with the children, but none of them want to play with her. Later, at her home, she cries and wonders why everyone wants to play with Minos and not her. Yurine is walking with Jashin and asks if she wants to eat ramen. Jashin agrees, and they go to a ramen place. It turns out Paporon works there. However, she goes by the name Noel, confusing Jashin into thinking she's someone else. They order ramen, but Jashin remains suspicious of Paporon. She sets a trap and realizes that it is indeed Paporon. Yurine breaks one of Paporon's fingers to stop her from causing trouble. Then they leave the place, but Yurine realizes that Paporon is not a normal person. At home, Jashin decides to steal Yurine's dessert because she couldn't resist any longer. The flan prevented her from having seizures. But then, she remembers that the flan belongs to Yurine and gets very nervous. When Yurine arrives, Jashin tells her that there's an invisible man who ate her flan. Yurine realizes it's a lie and decides to put Jashin in an Iron Maiden filled with spikes. Next, we see Jashin and Medusa stuck in a strange place. They only have a flashlight, and suddenly they hear something. Quickly, they decide to hide in a closet, but this person finds them and starts banging on the closet. Just then, Minos arrives and kills this person. She warns them to be careful because there's a horde of zombies. They start running, but Jashin gets trapped with the zombies. However, it turns out to be a nightmare caused by Yurine placing a damp cloth on her feet. We see Pecola walking down the street, and finally, she has enough money. But she falls, and her money flies into the donation box of people collecting for street children. Pecola tries to ask for her money back, but the girls thank her with a smile for her donation. So, Pecola leaves it that way and says nothing, only walking away crying. When she gets home, she laments and cries endlessly about her bad luck. But then, she realizes she still has 2,000 yen left. So, with that money, she decides to go to a restaurant to have curry. When she gets there, she encounters Jashin. Since there are no other seats available, she has to sit next to her. As she sits down, she overhears two men talking, and they claim that the girls collecting donations for needy children were scammers and that they saw the police take them away. Pecola realizes that they were the girls to whom she accidentally donated. Pecola becomes distraught and flies out of the door, dropping her 2,000 yen bill. Jashin picks it up and uses it to pay for the meal. Later on, Yasu and Kori are looking for Yurine. However, Jashin says that she died and hits Kori with her tail. Yasu gets angry at this and attacks with ice spikes. When they reunite with Yurine, they ask her to please try their infernal ice cream. Yurine tries it and says it's too delicious. Then Jashin decides to try hers, but it tastes like basilisk poison, so she spits it out and gets angry. Yasu says the business isn't very profitable, so she decides to sell their ice cream for 1 million yen. However, Yurine tells her that they won't sell anything that way. We see Pecola looking for a job at a magazine when suddenly she sees an ad offering 30,000 yen per day, so she decides to call and inquire. After calling, Pecola is immediately hired, but she still doesn't know what she'll be doing. Suddenly, a man arrives and tells her that she will work as a bodyguard or a shield. Then the person she is supposed to serve arrives. This person is Paporon. Apparently, she is becoming an idol. Pecola is surprised that being an idol is so dangerous that she needs bodyguards. Later, Paporon goes outside to sign her book and then proceeds to perform a concert with all her fans. It turns out she sings very well. Meanwhile, Pecola is thinking about how to spend her 30,000 yen since nothing bad has happened. But out of nowhere, a fan climbs onto the stage to harm Paporon. Just when it seems like he's really going to hurt her, Pecola intervenes to defend her, doing everything possible to help Paporon escape. However, the fan strikes her hard on the head, and she has to go to the hospital. While she's in the hospital, Yurine and Jashin go to visit her. Pecola feels a bit bad because she lost her 30,000 yen, but Yurine tells her that the nurse said all expenses were covered by someone else. This makes Pecola happy. Later, at Jashin's house, Medusa asks her to teach her how to make chocolates as Valentine's Day is approaching. Jashin refuses and tells her to buy them at the mall. Medusa says it's better to give something handmade to someone you care about. Jashin becomes jealous, but Medusa tells her she'll reveal the recipient once she has made the chocolates. Jashin agrees and teaches her how to make chocolates step by step. When the chocolate is ready, Jashin asks Medusa who she will give it to since it's so important. It turns out the chocolate is for Jashin because she cares about her so much, as she is her best friend. Upon hearing this, Jashin becomes very happy, and that's how the first season of this anime ends. If you've reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you've been one of the few people to make it this far. So comment the word demon in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.